When I tell people what I do for a living, they almost always have some kind of personal experience with a speech therapist. Typically, they recall how they had to see one when they were a kid because they couldn't pronounce their R's or maybe their S's, or how their brother saw a speech therapist because he stuttered, that kind of thing. And a lot of speech therapists do that kind of work, but that's only a fraction of what our field actually consists of. My name is Jen Robertson, and I've been a speech language pathologist for about 15 years, working with people with developmental disabilities. I currently work at Helen Keller Children's Learning Center, a special education preschool in downtown Brooklyn. Now, in my job, we don't have SLOs or SLIs, but we do have long and short-term goals, which I've come to realize is basically the same thing. Each student has a few general long-term goals, which are made up of more specific, measurable short-term objectives. The short-term objectives have parameters such as how the task will be presented, the level of prompting that's allowed, and the criteria for mastery, meaning that the objective is successful when the kid can do it X% of the time. Usually 80%. We don't chase nines. We also don't have stakeholders in the traditional sense, but we have people that we answer to, of course, our supervisors, principals, case managers, etc. But most importantly, the child themselves and their family. But figuring out what goals to write and exactly how to measure them is often very tricky. We need to satisfy the users, but really we need to help the child. I typically work with kids who are nonverbal or who are just beginning to communicate and who have significant behavioral and sensory needs. So I need to focus on goals that are functional. I'm not teaching academic skills like grammar. I'm not concerned about perfect pronunciation. My students need to be able to communicate their basic daily needs. They're hungry, when they're sleepy, what toy they want to play with, that kind of thing. A lot of goals that look good on paper don't actually translate to meaningful progress for these children. Now, there's probably not too many similarities between the goals that I'm writing and the SLOs and SLIs that you're writing for your customers. But one thing I know is the same is that if you're not measuring the right thing, no one is going to be happy. So let me give you an example of Johnny. Johnny's a little boy, he's 3 years old, and he's just starting to talk. So I write a goal for him that says, Johnny will independently label flashcards of food in 80% of trials. And Johnny, eventually, after a few sessions, is able to label 90% of the flashcards. So great, right? He's doing even better than was required. He's doing it independently, and now he knows the name of a bunch of fruit. So great. But when he's playing in the play kitchen, can he recognize a toy apple? When he sees an actual apple at home, does he recognize it? Can he pick up an apple in the supermarket when mom asks him to? Can he ask for an apple when he wants one? Can he express that he doesn't want an apple if he's not hungry? And so on and so on. So saying Johnny mastered his goal of labeling foods on flashcards looks great on a report card, and any parent or principal who's looking at it will probably be happy. But are they going to notice any change in Johnny's actual communication skills in real life? And if not, then my goal wasn't meaningful. From where I sit, I would rather have Johnny be able to ask for an apple when he's hungry even 20% of the time than to have achieved that useless goal that I wrote for him. And even if Johnny is able to communicate when he wants an apple, it's only really useful if it's consistent. So say Johnny has learned how to ask for an apple when he's hungry with me during one-on-one therapy in an optimal environment in my office. And that's great. That's where you have to start, of course. But can he also achieve this goal in the classroom with his teacher, at home with his mom, when he's in the park with the babysitter? If his performance is not consistent over time, with variables such as partner, location, and context, then he hasn't really met the goals. Now, what if he's not meeting the goals? There's usually two main problems here. Either he's not meeting the objectives at all, or he is meeting the objectives, but like I've just been talking about, it's not helping overall communication or behavior, which means that I need to rethink the goals that I'm writing for this kid. So the first thing I would do is meet with my team, who are other professionals who may have more insight onto the situation. For me, my team is maybe the classroom teacher, other therapists like an occupational or physical therapist, a nurse, a social worker. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe their experiences with Johnny can point out something that I could do to make him more successful. I might end up trying different strategies. There's different types of therapy, group versus individual. I might try getting my colleagues involved to do co-treatment. There's all different things I could do. The other, a very important part, is that I need to have a conversation with the end user, which is Johnny's family. And there's a few things I need to make sure of here. First of all, are these goals clear? Goals are usually written in clinical terms that not everyone is familiar with. But I need to make sure that the parents understand the general idea of, like, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to get to do for Johnny? Another thing I need to find out is, how are they helping to work on these goals at home? What are they doing on their end? Johnny is only in school with me and with his teacher and his other therapists for so many hours a week. So parents need to help out at school. He needs to be able to generalize. So maybe I end up giving the parents some more strategies, activities, tips for how he can take these goals and generalize them to his home environment. And finally, what are their expectations as parents? What matters most to them? I need to take this into consideration when I write my treatment plan. And what if their expectations aren't realistic? Maybe their kid isn't ready to talk in full sentences, or maybe isn't ready to talk at all yet. And I need to work on the skills to build up to that, or maybe provide a different way to communicate altogether. I need to explain to the parents, help them understand what they should be expecting, why I'm setting the goals that I am. And maybe I need to adapt my goals to fit in more with Johnny's routine at home, so I can incorporate more familiar concepts into his therapy at home. Maybe they don't even eat apples in Johnny's household, or he doesn't even like apples. So my goals didn't even make sense this whole time. So talk to who matters the most and find out what they want to achieve and how to achieve it meaningfully. Now, I don't have SLAs. I don't have a written contract that explicitly states that I will achieve X percentage or else. But I do have a tacit understanding with everyone, my supervisors, the parents, and myself, that I will do my best to help their child succeed.